Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel formerly known as Empower Radio. I'm Brent Carey, and hopping back on here to talk to some friends about some interesting things, and appreciate you joining us. If you have not had a chance to like and subscribe to us on YouTube, please do that because we are this close to 1,000 subscribers to YouTube. So maybe you can help us get there. We're very close, so that is appreciated. And yeah, we're still here and transitioning a little bit. You'll see in just a moment. We're kind of more video. Empower Radio, obviously here for a long time, and it's still listed on Facebook and other places as Empower Radio. But we're gonna change that up a little bit. So it's a work in progress, but appreciate you joining us. And I am thrilled to be joined by Sharita Star, who did Empower Scopes for years on Empower Radio, and now has her brand new podcast called the Sharita Star Empower Hour. Sharita, it's great to have you here.
Thank you, Brent. Thank you so much for reconnecting under the Mercury Retrograde. It's a perfect opportunity to do so. And yeah, 9 years of Empower Scopes. That's what I had counted. We had at least over 1,000 episodes of those.
That's amazing. That's fantastic.
Wow. It was a wonderful 9-year run. Yes, it absolutely was. Yeah.
Well, Sharita and I did several, deep dives into astrology. It's so fascinating to me just how astrology and what Sharita talks about plays out in not only your personal life, but in the stars and worldwide. So there are trends, and we'll get into that and everything like that. But there's a lot going on right now, and I thought it would be fun to bring Sharita on and talk a little bit about it. And Sharita, let's start with a little bit. We can't see you tonight, but that's kind of the theme for the year.
Yeah, it is. Because I had a couple of interviews that people wanted to do with me at the close of 22 to, let's chit chat about 23. And I said, as long as we can do them audio only, I'm all in. And, thankfully they were obliging. And there's a lot going on this year. And it's because we are in it. So and this is where I love having this graphic up here, because then we can you don't have to be looking at me and getting distracted. You're just listening and you're going to pick up what I'm talking about, I think, a lot better. So 2023 is a 7 universal year in the numerology portion of the program. 7 is guided by Neptune. Neptune is our planet that is about intuition, inner listening, the subconscious realms, and dream study, and our inner healing, all that, what we say, sharpening the inner saw work, and any pretty much gamut of the spiritual world and that unknown, the psychic energy, all of these wonderful, delicious things that people Neptunian guided tend to get into. And not that other planets won't guide over these things, but Neptune certainly loves it. And Neptune is also about taking time in stillness. And so this is where I kind of coined, and Neptune right now, and will be this entire year as we open 23 and we will close it, Neptune is only in the sign of Pisces, which is Neptune guides Pisces as well. So Neptune right now Neptune's about 84 something years around the zodiac it takes to get all the way through all the 12 signs. It's second out from Uranus, so it's a little longer than that, I do believe. Pardon my non-math details there. But when you have Neptune at home in its own sign that it guides and rules over, and we're in this 7 universal year energy that is also Neptune guided, this is all about the need upon our planet collectively. This is everywhere in this world right now. The more people are taking the time to be the habit of stillness and honoring the silent listen. Now, if you look at that word stillness there, you notice that you can also take silent and take listen out of there. Brent's got a few more graphics we're going to be looking at, and we decided we're going to talk all about why we need to be in reflection. And this is what I do with the lexicograms. So it's my third little treat, star secret, whatever you want to call it, alongside astrology and numerology. These lexicograms that I wrote the book, it's all in the name on. You can find that under publications at my website, Sharita Star. But it's this art of lexicograms is the art form of taking any word, name, or a title and spelling out the truth. So from reflection, we can, everything that you see here below reflection is only derived, it's an anagram taken from that word that you phrase it like poetry or prose, and it spells out the truth. So as Brent also spoke about, we're in Mercury retrograde right now, which that started on the 21st of April. It will be done on the 14th of May. This is happening from Taurus. So we got a lot of, and Mercury retrograde, first and foremost, it's a cycle of reflection. If you go back to what already exists during any given Mercury retrograde all throughout the year, you will get your rewards. And on the new podcast, and thank you for mentioning that. If you go back to I think it's August of last summer, I did a go-to standard mastering Mercury retrograde episode. It is not about any particular Mercury retrograde. It is about the rules of thumb. You'll also see that if you go to sharitastar.com, you'll see down the right side of any page, you'll see mastering Mercury retrograde. So you can find, there's various ways and avenues to go find out. So when you take the word reflection, and these were just a couple of different ones I have come up with. I need to write a full blog on this because I've realized I've never written a full blog on reflection. I don't know why. I've written 500 blogs, but so what we can spell when we take these anagrams from reflection and phrase them together like poetry or prose, let's spell out the truth. I recline to free it, to feel it in center, to entice it in one fertile core. This is the benefit of what reflection does for us. And this is where Mercury retrograde is so well designed in our timing, but most people have either A, no clue it's Mercury retrograde because they don't follow astrology, or B, have the wrong idea about Mercury retrograde because they're following the wrong information about astrology. And this is, of course, what aggravates me the most in life, because you're compromising living consciously. So when you know what to do with Mercury retrograde, you're going to have a better time with it. You have to understand that the energy is a little offset. And if you go back to what's already established and play around with it and rework it and free it up a little bit, and don't make plans for the future. Don't sign documents unless it's a renewal of any kind. There's all these rules. Again, go check all that out. I don't want to get into a Mercury retrograde lesson, but reflection, being in that space of reflection is so important. Now, reflection is also all about what the year 2023 is asking for the entire 12 months. And it's not to say we're not going to move forward as a humanity but the practice, the habit of honoring reflection, honoring stillness so that we can listen and we're silent is so much better. Which is why I have not done anything on video, because you just need to hear what I'm saying. You don't need to look at me. And that's, I get we want human connection, and I'm not going to take away from that, but you got to go do that in person now.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad that you were at least able to join us tonight, Sharita, and talk a little bit about it. And, it's Mercury retrograde. Is it just me, or is the whole world out to get me? What's going
this
on
is
right
great
now?
This is fantastic. I love this. This is so priceless. I mean, I love these Mercury retrograde memes. Some of them are kind of like a little over the top, but this one is, and this is where on my Soul Certainty community, which is on Patreon, this is where I've been doing Mastering Mercury Retrograde courses since I think 14. So it's almost, or did I start? I can't remember. They're almost a good decade old, because I got so aggravated at one point going, my God, people just don't know what to do with the cycle. They need to be just educated and pointed in the right direction that, hey, if you just don't do this for these number of days to the best of your ability, or at least know you need a backup plan. You need to understand things are going to change around. That is always the energy of any given Mercury retrograde. But the last Mercury retrograde isn't the same as this one, and nor will the one that's coming up in late August be the same, because they're all in a different zodiac sign.
Well, and this one has been, I've noticed that this one has been affecting not only myself, but the people around me more than usual. So,
well, the
that's
other thing we're dealing
but
with is well, we've got a very strong planet on a tipping point right now, and that is Pluto. This is something else I talk about very strongly on Soul Certainty community on Patreon. Is Pluto back in March crossed the threshold of into Aquarius, where it only has reached 0 degrees. May 1st, it went retrograde. So it's only going to go back through that 0 point it got to in Aquarius by the minutes and the astrology measuring of time. And by June 11th, it retrogrades back into Capricorn again. So now, the reason why there's a lot of intensity going on, there's multi-layers. I could get down 20 million little tangents right now, but I'm going to try to keep it to this understanding of what we're experiencing as a collective of this, what we call in the numerology world, grace under pressure, which is coming from that Pluto as it's going back into Capricorn coming up in June, and what it was doing leading up to March 23rd. It was at the 29th degree of Capricorn. We just had, because we're in the midst of eclipse season right now, which is why this Mercury retrograde is very intense. And I had said it, I think it was a podcast or two ago, or whatever. One of the things I'm constantly plugging stuff out on Soul Certainty, is that I haven't seen a Mercury retrograde in a very long time not coincide with either eclipses or another inner planet retrograde. Like, it's been ages, and the only one that I see coming up, it's going to close out the year. So we're going to end 2023 under Mercury retrograde, by the way, just to forewarn you now. That's all under your Mastering Mercury Retrograde on the website. You can go check all the dates out that you need to know about. But so these retrogrades are very, very extra intense. And when so the day before Mercury went retrograde on the 21st, we had a solar eclipse in Aries. It clipped the very end of it, 29 degrees. We're getting this 29-degree energy again. And again, in numerology, it represents grace under pressure. There's a podcast episode you can also go to on Mind, Body, Spirit FM, the one that aired on the 21st of April. It's a whole eclipse season special, so it gives you all the details of what I'm talking about with these numbers. But in a chimped down Cliff Notes version, the grace under pressure is why we are feeling what we're feeling, and this extra intensity. Now, eclipses come on a new moon or a full moon, and so the solar eclipse, we're still what we say waxing from that eclipse on the 20th of April, and you've got the lunar eclipse graphic up, and we're going to talk about that in about another 30 seconds. So we're pulling off and increasing from that solar eclipse on the 20th of April. But what happens is, even though we click into the waning phase, on the 5th of May, which is a couple of days away, and we're going to have this Scorpio lunar eclipse come in, all under Mercury retrograde.
Well, and Scorpio's intense. I mean, that's not just
And
any
so
other
you
eclipse.
betcha. And so is Aries, but Aries very fiery. Okay. So what's also very interesting about this pairing of eclipses is that they're not in exact opposing signs either. It's a rarity, but it's happening. Like so many things these days, everything's a rarity now. It's not the way it normally was. There is no normal. I hate to tell people this, but it's not a fear thing. It's like we're never going to go back to the energy we had in 2019 or any time before. Number one, because no two moments in time are ever the same way twice, but the way that this energy on our planet is accelerating and how these numbers are speaking all the time and how the overlapping of this and that are all blah, 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 going on. It's a lot. It's intense stuff. We're highly accelerated right now. And most human beings aren't equipped to, unless you're doing any form of awareness or spiritual work, you got no clue what's going on. You don't even know how to deal with it. And it's, I mean, I think it would be fair to say that there's a lot going on. And we haven't even talked about America yet,
Yeah,
so,
well,
but it's
that's
a
why it's so
global thing,
important. Yeah, that's why it's so helpful to talk about this, though, because when people just say it's like, oh, it feels like everything's crazy right now, and then you look and you talk about the astrology and you hear the things that you're talking about, and it's right there, and it makes sense. And these moments in time, well, like you said, they're unique, but they also rhyme. And there are times throughout history when these certain alignments have taken place, and they have been times of great upheaval. And it's interesting to see how that plays out. It helps me personally understand. It's like, oh, that makes sense. Okay, this is why that's things are taking place in a certain way at this time, and you can certainly see it happening all around us.
Yeah, and it doesn't mean that, it's funny. Again, I lose track sometimes of what episode is what, but I think it was the one I did the episode of the podcast of. It's back in March, I do believe, the second one of March. They only come out bi-monthly, so. But I talked about what enlightenment actually is, and it's not light and fluffy stuff. This is not, quote, rainbows. I've said this multiple times over. None of this we're experiencing is rainbow and unicorns energy. And it's not to say you can't be empowered and have tools to utilize during this time, but humanity is going through the heaviest healing it has dealt with in quite some time.
Well, one of the exciting things about this time is the move into the age of Aquarius, and you mentioned that with Pluto. And
yes, and that's going to come more so in 24, because Pluto has all this work to finish up in Capricorn. So we're getting a little snippet of it from March 23rd to June 11th, and then we got all this work to finish up in Capricorn. So Pluto, it's by early 24 he will move into Aquarius for good. I think he goes back one more time. I have to look. There's an article as well. You'll see it on the website if you go to America's Pluto return, because this time that we're wavering with this Pluto energy, crossing a little bit over into Aquarius and then going, which will be happening by June 3rd, is going to go back into Pluto. Go back into Capricorn. Hello, Mercury. Thank you for taking my tongue. The Capricorn energy in our natal Pluto as a nation is 27 degrees of Capricorn. So we are in since 2021, and Pluto, because it's the last planet we're looking at and how astrology is understood, that we look at with all the planetary placements. It took Pluto 248 years to get around the country's entire chart once. this is why we've never been in the position we've been in as a nation as we have until right now. And these last couple of years, when this started in 2021, and we had a 3 exact, what we call direct hits in 2022 and crossed over into 23, early 23. And then we've got one more that comes. It's not exact, but it's not exact to the exact minute, but it goes right back to that 27 degrees of Capricorn. That's where when Capricorn turns, when Pluto turns around in Capricorn in October, it will be stationed at 27 degrees of it. And that is where we have, quote, hit 4 of, and it's the last time the Pluto will get that close to the natal Pluto again for another 248 years, if America can exist this long. We'll see what we're doing by then.
Yeah, and you cover all of this in your podcast. So I think, for people wanting to do a deeper dive, you've got so much great information there.
Yeah, there is, yes. And there's that episode came out, I believe in October. I did America's Pluto Return, Accepting Accountability in America. I mean, you'd have to go back. I think there's now, because we only started it with the Emparoscopes ended last June. We immediately hopped on board and started this new adventure and challenge in July of last year. So I think now there's about 22. Well, this Friday's episode is the network's doing a wonderful, the month of May is dedicated to gratitude. So they asked any podcaster who'd be interested to dedicate an episode to it. So that is what you'll be hearing about on Friday. Nice. And it's all about the numerology and how the lexigrams of gratitude work. And it's a fun one. And just other energetic consciousness tidbits.
Well, and you mentioned lexigrams, and we've shown a few, and it's so fascinating to see what words come out of certain things. And you even did one for Mercury Retrograde.
Yes, this is barely anything, but again, if you go to Mastering Mercury Retrograde, there's links all embedded in that, and you can go to. I have a general go-to thing on the site, but to get the specifics of any, because every Mercury retrograde is different, again, as we talked about before, than the last. So the key to always understand how to be truly mastering it, aside from following, quote, the rules, you want to know, okay, so this one's in Taurus. The last one was in, the one that crossed us to the clip, just the tail end of 22, moved us through the first 3 weeks of 23, was in Capricorn. And the one that'll come up in late August, moving us into September, will be in Virgo. So Mercury is all reflection in the earth signs during this time. But that's a different area of your personal life when you're looking at your natal chart in astrology. So every Mercury retrograde is asking for a different kind of reflection. You're still meant to do the practice and the action of reflection, but you're going to have to do it in a different area of your life. So it's to know your forecast. And when I do the Mastering Mercury Retrograde workshops, you always at least get for your sun sign where you want to point yourself. And then, of course, if you do your, personal year ahead forecast with me, which a lot of my followers do on a regular, every year when it's their birthday, they get their forecast done, because that's when you should have it done. And then you have your whole map for the whole year ahead. So you always have a twofold forecast. You have the collective one, which is, the general horoscope understanding, which has some merit, but it's not everything. Your real deal personal story is that natal chart, which we need to know the time you're born and the place and the whole full birth date. And, we really get, we get deliciously diving deep into who you are and why you tick the way you do and why you are the unique individual that you are. So
heading into Friday's eclipse.
Oh, yes.
We talked a little bit about it. What are some things that, because it's an intense time. So what are some things to do during the eclipse season to kind of ease into it, take the edges off a little bit?
Yeah, we need. Well, you said it very clearly. Is that Scorpio is, obviously so intense. So, we've moved from the moon has waxed from the 20th of April under that solar eclipse, 29 degrees of Aries. And that, and the other thing that I just wanted to make sure people are clear about, like, we're always waxing or waning with the moon. That's how we're always ebbing and flowing, and we're either in a waning phase or a waxing phase. That's it divvies up the month, and it shifts all the time. But the eclipses take the natural energy of pulling in and initiating into the waxing phase, or reflecting and releasing, letting go under the waning phase of a full moon back to a new moon. It takes, and unless it's a total eclipse, it'll be up to a year's time, which we are still at work with from last November 8th. We will be at work with that eclipse that happened Election Day, November 8th of 2022. That is reflective energy that's all within Taurus. That eclipse was very significant because it was exactly conjunct Uranus retrograde at the time, which is about disturbance and disruption and reinvention and collapse of established systems that started last November, that is not done until this November. Because that was a total lunar eclipse on November 8th that happened. So we're at work with that on one layer. Now, what'll happen now, these pairing of eclipses we've got going on right now are only, they're partial, they're not full, or a total eclipse, what we call. So they're only about 6 months. So the initiating effects that this one had from April 20th, from grace under pressure, which in the numerology is saying there's pressure for 6 months. You're going to have to emotionally respond to this. You're not going to, if you react, you're going to get yourself in a dither that you don't want to be in. But it's also this time frame wants healing more than it wants anything else. It wants nurturing. It wants nourishing. It wants everything to shift in how we're consciously dealing with wherever that 29 degrees Aries point really sits in your personal life. You got that personal homework, but the collective is being asked to, let's lead with a little bit more awareness. Now, so that's pulling off through the autumn. And then we're going to have another pair of eclipses come autumn 2023 in October. So we're going to pull in all this grace under pressure energy for these next 6 months. Now, what happens Friday on the 5th of May? I would highly recommend anybody. I mean, not that I don't think many people watching here are huge, go out and let's go party it up under Cinco de Mayo, but I would be very, very cautious if you are out and about celebrating Cinco de Mayo, because you've got two things happening on Friday. Not only are you dealing with Mercury retrograde to begin with, you are dealing with a lunar eclipse in the sign of death and rebirth from Scorpio. And this hits from 14 degrees of Scorpio. Very important number. That's all in the eclipse season special. So I'm not going to get into but what it does, the theme of this eclipse is listening to adapt. What the next 6 months are going to ask, aside from that grace under pressure, you're going to have to listen in order to adapt. If you don't listen, you're not going to adapt well. If you keep watching things and keep getting deceived and keep getting fooled by things, and I'm just going to give one example where it has nothing to do with politics. It's just the fact of what they're doing. We have to be very careful what we're watching, because it may not be real. And that is a huge theme all throughout this year of 2023. That's that Neptune thing. Seeing through the illusion. That's the Neptune is key about that. Having to see in the dark. Owl totem is also very good for this year. You want to see in the dark, or the bat totem is another really good animal totem to call upon. But look at what happened. So this is, again, this is the example, not politics. So I'm not talking about it in favor or not. It's what happened. Y'all know what happened. All the AI images that came out of Donald Trump after he got indicted, getting arrested, they were fake. They weren't real.
Well, there are all kinds of different,
And that's
AI
just
images
one.
of
Yep,
all kinds
that's
of
one
things. Yeah.
example. So what the clarity of what your numerology is advising in 2023 is watch what you take in. Be very discerning, which is why listening is the key to understanding what's really going on this year. And you've got, when you get into the meanings, these Chaldean karmic mysteries that deal with the 29, that eclipse from last fall, the total eclipse that I mentioned, that was 16 degrees. That's another very important number to understand. There's a whole episode dedicated to that last November of the finale of 2023, 22, excuse me, at the time. But the 16, the 29, the 14, all three of these energies that are really hitting us right now. Well, the one Friday hasn't quite got here, but it will be. Every single one of these numbers in their Chaldean karmic mysteries all have the same advice. Listen to the voice within.
And that's kind of where we started.
And that is also, listen to the voice within is a 2023 theme, but you've got it coming from, I've never seen the need to listen and be more still and just take in silent more time, however you do it. And, music is also lovely, and not watching music videos per se, but listening to music also is very healing for a time like this. Yet, time in your nature, time in, as much as you can find. I mean, even and a lot of people, they just go, I have such a busy life. I don't have time to do this. I don't have time to do that. The more you say you don't have time to do it, the more you need to make time to do it, because
that's the way it goes, isn't it?
You're gonna run amok, and you're gonna, you just can't. You can't get caught up in that. This is not the year to do it. At least that's what the energy reads. I never tell people what to do. This is just a piece of advice. This is how it shows up. The energy is intense. I can't tell it to anybody any other way. But there's tools, and the tool right now is practicing stillness, and it doesn't mean you have to go become a hermit, but even if you can take 10 minutes in your day, you're going to notice the value in that over time, is just to give yourself that quiet, turn off the phone, spend less time on social media. But, thank you for being here this evening. But you know what I mean? Like, don't let devices control you. Don't let the system control you. Be in control of the system.
If you don't have a meditation practice, this is a great time to start one.
Yeah.
It's that kind of year, and hey, start small, right? But
you don't have to complicate that either. A lot of people say, I can't meditate. I said, do you like to garden? Do you like to listen to music? Do you like taking a walk? And I'll get a yes. That's a form of meditation. Some people want to they really they want to start meditating and think that they're just going to empty their brain cells, and they're never going to have a thought run through their head. And that's not what meditation is. It is, there's so many different things you can do to meditate. It's the first and foremost, you just want to focus on your breath. Just start breathing and focusing on your breath. And you'll be starting somewhere,
Absolutely. Well, and you've got a lot of great information too. And you, my gosh, you have done a great job of covering it. There's so much going on right now.
There's too much going on. I can't keep up with it all.
You've done a great job of touching on the key points in the time that we had. But I know that you're always, sharing information. We talked about your podcast, and we'll come back to that. But also, you have a Patreon community where you're sharing all kinds of updates and thoughts and analysis for people.
Yeah, and the soul certainty community, it's only one level at this. It's one tier, they call it. And, I have yet to even develop the higher tier. So it's such an extremely low cost subscription. And I just keep throwing everything on there. So
Great content though.
I want
It's like
people to have the
a cup of
information,
coffee at Starbucks. It's great value. So
yeah, at this point, I want people to have access to the information. It's like 2 cups of coffee at Starbucks. I don't even know what they cost anymore, but you know what I mean? I mean, that's it per month. It is very, very reasonable. And you get you get at least 8 posts a month from me. So it's certainly,
well,
like I said, I need to reframe it a little bit moving forward. And, for my more, real serious people, I'll level up. I'll allow them to level up because we all need to do new challenges. But right now, with everything coming and how everything is going to be truly going, the more people are empowered. And I know finances are a huge issue for so many people right now. And I think having, the accessibility is more important. I'd rather touch the lives of many people than just only touch the lives of a few. So.
Right. Well, between Patreon and your podcast, you've got so much great information out there. And, we didn't even talk about the lunaroscopes, but you've got all kinds of great information that you're sharing.
Well, that and if you hop on Soul Certainty, you will find what both of these eclipses mean for you. What area of your life are you supposed to be expecting this pull-in of initiation? Of course, carefully until the Mercury retrograde's over with, from the 20th of April's eclipse. And then what this Friday is asking you to take the next 6 months and go, okay, how are we going to clean up this area of my life? And what am I releasing? And you had these come out twice a month on Soul Certainty for every new moon and full moon. Of course, this month, well, the end of last month, this month, we have the obvious pairing of the eclipses. So, I mean, you even have the eclipse from last fall that you'd really want to know about. That's on there too. I mean, everything just, once it gets posted on the Patreon, it just sits there. And once you hop on, you have access. It's like carte blanche. So, but you had just took like a little energetic tool for this particular eclipse on Friday. You had the lexigram there before of the lunar eclipse.
Oh, yes. There it is.
So here's another, example of how lexigrams work. We're going to spell out the truth from the title, Lunar Eclipse, and look at all of this, like when we, in a precise silence, I pair in a sincere air. As I spiral, I see pleasure in release. I can see all super clear. I rise in a real pure cleanse. I recall a real peace pace. I cure, I care, I clean up. And that's the energy of a lunar eclipse. It's what it does energetically. So if we can embrace that and allow that to happen, and again, it's going to be a very intense Friday out there in the world. So, exercise caution, take your time, don't be in a rush. That's big rules under retrograde. But with this kind of energy kicking off simultaneously, you're going to want to take it extra slow and, don't force it if it doesn't want to go,
Well, it's great advice, and that's probably a great place to wrap it up. I was going to ask you if you had any advice for people, but that's it. That's a great way to
let's spell out the truth from lunar eclipse and let it tell us what, and I invite anybody to play around, and have fun with them, because there's once you get into lexigrams, oh my God, it'll be like if you like Scrabble and like, all those word find kind of, if you're that kind of head, like you like to just like play around with words, and you do, I mean, when you get into these lexigrams, you're going to be hooked.
Yeah, and I need to mention to people too, Sharita literally wrote a book on this. So she knows what she's talking about, and she does a great job with them, and it's fascinating to play around with it, and then also to see what she comes up with. So I know that you share those regularly, and it's worth keeping an eye on because you're unlocking some interesting information with those.
Well, as my mentor, Linda Goodman, always said, like these things, the way that this works, yeah, there's nothing. She's like, you have a crystal ball. I mean, really, it's almost uncanny how these work. And if you want to just see a little bit more of how they work with people, if you go to sharitastar.com and go under publications, the top of the page has the book trailer. It's under 2 minutes, and you'll see some celebrity examples that we pulled out of the book, and they visually do it on the screen. It's really fun. Who put that together for me? So that was a treat. So. Yeah, I mean, there's just so much. You're kind of giving me an idea right now. I think the upper tier on the Patreon I'll create once this retrograde gets out of my hair is I'll do a lexigram tier and we'll go for it. Why not?
Yeah. Well, again, you can find Sharita at sharitastar.com. She has her Patreon group if you want, to be in contact with her regularly, and don't miss the new podcast that she has. It's at mindbodyspirit.fm, but it's also everywhere else. I mean, Spotify and all the places where you can.
It's the Apple, the Google.
You can find it everywhere.
It's everywhere. Apple,
it's
Google.
Everywhere. And she is everywhere.
What's the other one? Spotify.
Yeah. So take advantage of all the great information that Sharita has. And Sharita, thanks for being so generous with your time and joining us, kind of spontaneous to hop back on here and just share some information and talk to everybody tonight.
Well, I give you a big, huge, great, true attitude of gratitude and for thinking of me and to have me back. This was really just a splendid time to reconnect, and it's so wonderful to see you as well. And thank you for understanding the silent listen, vocal only. So
absolutely.
I hope people took it in a little differently than having to look at me.
Well, it's been wonderful having you here. Thanks again, and we will have more for you coming up. And if you haven't had a chance to subscribe to us on YouTube, I mentioned at the beginning, but we are so close to getting to 1,000. So if you take a moment, go over there, subscribe to the Empower channel on YouTube. It's currently listed as Empower Radio. We're going through a reimagining of what this is all about. So the name will change, but right now that's where you can find us. And appreciate you joining us tonight. Thank you, Sharita.
Thank you, Brent. Thank you, everyone, for listening, and for listening if you're listening to this on the auto archive.
Oh, and real fast, when does Mercury retrograde end?
Just to clarify on that, to intensify the reflection portion of the program. We're under it from the Mercury, but as this eclipse pulls in on the 5th, the time period from the 5th of May through the 14th, when Mercury will turn direct, is going to be very intense. So it's like you're getting a double pull of reflection, if that makes sense, because you're already being asked to reflect in Taurus from Mercury retrograde, and then this eclipse opposing in Scorpio. So basically, we're getting like a balancing act going on. It's like, we got reflection over here, and then you got to do a 180, and you're doing reflection over there. So wherever that's diametrically opposing in your chart is also very important to understand to navigate it with as much ease as possible. So through the 14th of May, like I tell people, all bets are off. Don't force matters of great importance in your life. Plan, reframe, reorganize, and then after that 14th, you can go forward under the shadow. The station time will be sticky for a couple of days, and then you got a new moon on May 19th that'll kick energy up a little bit better to finish the shadow off through the 31st of May. So.
All right. Well, breathe through it, right?
And keep breathing,
It
folks.
is the
Just keep
season, but
breathing. Take it easy. Don't be in a rush. The best thing you can do right now is not force and not be in a rush.
there you
It'll
go.
be your saving grace every time.
Great advice. Thank you, Sharita. You have a great night. Thanks, everybody, for joining us.